Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Williams Summit. My name is Julius. I'm currently a senior majoring in economics and concentrating in public health and neuroscience. And I'm going to be your student host for today. Today we're fortunate to have Liz Robinson and Mariam Naficy. A fellow Chicago native, Liz retired in 2016 from a 25-year career at Goldman Sachs, where she was the firm's global treasurer. Liz currently serves as a director and advisor to a number of for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. She is on the boards of the Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, the Travelers Companies, Russell Reynolds Associates, and Every Mother Counts. Of course, assuming I complete my PA credits, she will also be signing my diploma in a couple months as the current chair of the Williams Board of Trustees. Mariam also started her career at Goldman Sachs, but caught the entrepreneur bug. She sold her venture, the beauty retailer Eve.com, in 2000, and it became a part of LVMH's Sephora. Currently, she is the founder and CEO of Minted.com, a website that crowdsources design for stationery and paper goods. Today, Minted is one of the biggest crowdsourcing platforms on the internet. Mariam, like Liz, is both on the board of trustees here at Williams and also at Every Mother Counts. And so I guess just to start, the title of this segment is Eve Friends. So I was hoping we could just start by talking about how you two met and a little bit about your first job experience.
Sure. You honest? I can't remember.
Sure. I can comment on that because Liz was a class above me, and I distinctly remember her as my econ TA, which she might not remember, but that's how it is, right? The younger class usually remembers the class ahead of them better. So I remember her standing in front of the classroom, and I don't remember which econ class, but there was a friend of yours who was your co-TA. And I remember being impressed already. And then I went through I was a poly-ec major. I think you were econ, is that right, Liz? And then I went through the recruiting process at Goldman, and I reconnected with Liz there because she was helping recruit, because the first year analysts help recruit the next class. And I'm pretty sure Liz and then another mutual friend of ours in Liz's class, Todd Owens, also basically helped recruit me. And I think that's basically how we met and got to know each other, was through Goldman. Well, through Williams and obviously the econ program, and then Goldman.
I'm glad you remember that. I remember I blocked out being a teaching assistant, but I clearly remember the recruiting process at Goldman. And it's like a generational thing, because I remember actually someone else on the Williams board with us, this guy named Mark Tursick, was the person who came to campus to interview for Williams for Goldman when I was a senior. So it's funny how you sort of pass that down through the generations. So, but it's also a reminder life is very long, and our paths have sort of crossed and intersected in different ways over many different years.
I actually also want to mention that we have a lot of mutual friends in common. So we would see each other socially over the years as well. So awesome. For example, Liz has a really close friend who is my husband, who's a Williams grad. His best friend from college is a really close friend of Liz's. This other guy was also on the crew with Michael. Gotcha. So I think we just our social circles overlapped.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so I guess, like professionally, like how did the first job impact your respective careers? I know you both went on slightly different paths. I was hoping you could kind of speak on that.
So yeah, I went to Goldman out of Williams because it was the only job offer I got, thanks to the Williams network at Goldman. And I found it so traumatic that I decided I was never going to interview for another job. But look, I found it was a place where I got tremendous opportunity, probably more at many points in my career than I thought I deserved, but there were people who were willing to take a bet on me. And I was able to move around the firm out of investment banking, where Mariam and I both started, where in the long run, I didn't think that was going to be a really resonant fit with my personality and my style, into an internal part of the organization that was responsible for doing some of the same things I'd done in banking, but only for Goldman Sachs. As we grew, it became more sophisticated as a company and much bigger, and then went public. And so I got to live over that 25-year period through the evolution of the firm, but also the industry and the financial markets, which was just sort of a fascinating time. And so unlike Mariam, who's done a ton of different things, I found one place. I worked for one guy for most of those years who was just a terrific mentor to me. And so it aligned that I kept learning, finding new challenges, new opportunities, and I never felt the need to go somewhere else to get those kinds of challenges that help you stay fresh and develop in your career. So I did stay for a really, really long time, but Mariam had a much more interesting journey.
Yeah, well, I got to New York and I felt that banking was not necessarily finance was not necessarily my passion. It was great to know. And I think of it as providing the engineering skills, if you will, to build companies, because I'm not an engineer, but I have built companies using more financial engineering. And so I sort of gained those skills at Goldman and really felt comfortable talking to people in finance, which was really important to, really be able to raise capital later. I think I've raised about a lot of capital and gone through many rounds of capital. And that being in that environment for so long really made me comfortable with the language, the vocabulary, how to pitch a deal, et cetera. And but I decided to become an entrepreneur after I landed in California in 93 and just fell in love with the emerging consumer internet and just decided that I did do some management consulting first, but then I started internet companies after that for, as you had mentioned, Eve.com and then Minted. And so my path has been serial entrepreneurship and general management. So that's really where I've been an operator and I really enjoy operating, starting companies from scratch, from nothing, from the nothing stage, and really enjoy operating them and love to come to work as an operator every day. Although I would say, Liz, don't you think you've been an operator too, actually, really, because you were inside Goldman, operating Goldman, right? I mean,
yeah, and that's part of the reason I also made the transition out of banking, because I felt like there was something less satisfying about going company to company and giving them advice about how you do this transaction.
Right.
And I liked the idea that every bit of knowledge that I gained for each transaction once I was working for Goldman was added as I built new things. And it's much more complex in some ways to have to do it for the company than it is to go in as an advisor and sort of say, oh, here's what you do, but you have to deal with the back end of, like when you advise as a banker on a financing transaction, the bankers walk away and then the company actually has this capital, like the world changes as you grow and evolve, and you just miss all of that, richness of detail if you're not living it. So yeah, I viewed myself, I guess, as an operator as well.
Operator, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And so after, you both went on your own career paths, did you ever intersect? You mentioned you had mutual friends. Did you ever intersect, like, personally, professionally? And like, how did that relationship continue?
No, I watched Mariam with like total awe, because you wrote a book. You neglected to mention that you wrote a book, which I remember, it's on my bookshelf, actually. I have like a shelf of books.
Funny, you're so funny.
I think, watching what your classmates go and do, it's like part of the amazing part of the Williams experiment, is knowing these people who have these amazing interests and go off and just build and do things. So I sort of felt very dull sitting at Goldman Sachs, cranking away at my career and watching sort of Mariam's sort of serial set of achievements, one thing after another. But I think there were probably long periods of time where we didn't actually spend a lot of time together because both of us were so deeply immersed in our careers and the crazy long hours that come with that. And then as you start to build a family, and I think there were many years where I didn't have a whole lot of time for anything extraneous, like a friend. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, because we're both moms. And so there's a period where you kind of go into this like deep hole of like early parenthood where if you're working, especially, and you're trying to balance work and being a mom of a toddler, it's just really there's nothing else that happens. So I definitely relate to that comment. And then occasionally when there were Williams get-togethers, Michael and I really tried to go to those, even though we were so far away. And I would see Liz through, just because, again, we have this overlapping friend set. So I think we periodically saw each other at sort of Michael's, the class of 90 reunions, I believe, probably, and some crew get-togethers and birthday parties, that sort of thing, big birthday parties. I vaguely remember running into Liz a bunch of times and talking and having fun. And then keeping track of her career and really admiring that, the same mutual admiration, I think. And then I tried to recruit you first, maybe to the EMC board, right? Is that right? So I set up a breakfast in New York, and I was thinking, God, this is such a long shot because Liz is so in demand. There's just no way this is going to happen. But I set up the founder of Every Mother Counts, Christy Turlington Burns, for breakfast with Liz, and we all had breakfast down in Tribeca in New York. And Christy, like me, fell in love with Liz, like absolutely in love, and said, I gotta have her. Can you get her for me, please? So I tried my best. And I think, so I don't know, Liz, what your perspective is, but that I remember that's when we first really notched up our working, together, because you joined that board.
Yeah, no, I remember that breakfast well, and I was terrified because it's like an interview, right? I don't do interviews. And so I, of course, showed up because I think the idea was, and I hadn't dealt with, unlike Mariam, who I think is really comfortable in the world of emerging businesses and startups and how you grow. I've never done anything smaller than like $1 trillion, right? That's not my point. And so I was asked to come to this breakfast, and I think it was because Every Mother Counts was trying to pivot and grow and become a more professional board of directors and build out its governance. I'd sat on a bunch of boards, and so the theory was I knew something about governance. So I showed up with like 6 pages of notes on, here's how you should set up your audit committee, because I was taught at Williams always to do my homework. And it was really interesting seeing, again, I think a lot of times when you make a career choice, there's always something selfish in it, that's something you think you want to learn and get out of it. And so for me, this idea of learning something about a really small emerging organization was really important. Something about mission, because I think the further I've gone in my life, the more you realize, I had this Goldman Sachs sort of laser focus, but this idea that you can do something that's mission oriented and really start to make a difference in the world. But you also really want to make sure you're giving something to that organization. So that I had to deliver this package of here's how you become a more modern board. And it was a really interesting, it's been a really interesting fit. And I've learned a ton from it. It's been really fun working at an organization of all women is the other thing, having lived in that for so long.
Sure. Well, Every Mother Counts is a maternal health organization that tries to ensure that pregnancy and childbirth are safe for women everywhere. So we work in about 6 countries, if I'm getting this correct, Liz, including the US. But for example, the US, Guatemala, Haiti, Tanzania, India, Bangladesh. And we provide grants to local, usually, always people who really understand the local community and what the particular needs of women are in those countries, in that local area. In the US, for example, we've made grants in Florida, for example, to, I would say, to help underinsured and underserved women with with matters of pregnancy, childbirth, and in helping those clinics, also just general called OBGYN, I guess, help. And the grants sometimes are paying for transportation from a rural area, for example, in Tanzania, to a clinic if something goes wrong during childbirth, and to be able to seek care, prenatal care. In some cases, it's to graduate classes of midwives, for example, in Haiti, where we've graduated at this point, probably, at least over 100, maybe hundreds of midwives in Haiti.
Wow.
Or in some cases, every country has a different problem, health problem. In India, it's interesting, we're helping lawyers actually help women seek what the government has actually promised them in terms of care. So they just have to help the women, help clinics wend their way through the legal system to actually obtain the grants and the funding the government has actually promised. So we're actually funding this group of lawyer activists to help with that. So it's fascinating that the solution in each country is really different. And we help with all of that, as well as creating a lot of awareness of the cause globally, and being a advocate for maternal health and an expert for maternal health. I mean, EMC is often consulted when a governmental agency is trying to form policy. They're consulted a lot, often. So I don't know, Liz, is there something
I think you nailed it. I mean, and to me, it's fascinating because it is a small organization in people and in dollars. So I think right now we have 12 people plus our founder who do this work across the advocacy, grant making, programs, communication, development, everything. And, we raise somewhere between, $5 and $10 million a year. But I think we're able to punch above our weight in that space because of the visibility that they've given to the organization and their ability to partner with both these local community-based organizations in a real trust-based way. But also again, having that visibility in those networks that allow you to partner to try to solve what is really a pervasive problem, again, around the world, but really in America. So it's really interesting how it achieves that.
I was just curious to know a little bit more about your thoughts related to the work that EMC does. So a WHO report showed that pregnant or recently pregnant women with COVID-19 are more likely to be admitted to the intensive care unit or need respiratory support when compared to non-pregnant women of reproductive age, and that pregnant women with COVID-19 were more likely to give birth prematurely. These findings, show that 1 in 4 babies are all babies born to women with COVID-19 were admitted to the neonatal unit. I guess combined with the disparate economic impacts of COVID-19 on pregnant women, how has the pandemic changed or accelerated your work with Every Mother Counts to advance maternity and childbirth safety?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start, Mariam, and you can if you want. I guess I would have said, look, the last year has been one that's really created additional need for the services that Every Mother Counts provide. As you said, COVID has had a huge impact on the experience of pregnant and birthing mothers. Not being able to bring a partner into the birth room, for example, has been a huge issue, as have been a lot of these incidents around systemic racism, because the findings are that women of color have much more issues with delivery and childbirth than others. And so this sort of disparate impact of race on healthcare has been huge. And I think we've really tried to ramp up in the last year, which is interesting because, working from home, all of these challenges, but there are so many great needs for the services and programs that we've provided that we have really stepped up around the world, but really in the US in particular.
Right.
Came up with innovative programs. So we've done in New York, for example, we set up a birthing center that was, again, through the COVID period, enabled just a warmer feeling and a safer feeling. We've done programs with other organizations, again, the sort of the community-based organizations that live in places that we can really rely upon to deliver these services, and we've helped to fund and support and educate them. But it's really trying to make sure that women feel heard and listened to, and have a really personal experience, because I think a lot of the problems in some ways come down to, as Mariam said, there's so many, whether it's distance or supplies or trained professionals, there's so many proximate causes for maternal health issues, but there's a consistent theme of really needing to center the mother in all of it and make sure that the mother is truly heard and supported through the experience. So it's been, I think we almost doubled our funding last year. We really had a huge lean in moment because it really did play into the things that we've been doing. I don't know, that was a start, Mariam.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think the two notable efforts, which were quite a bit of work, were the Just Birth Space, which was that virtual perinatal support space for women in New York City and northern, and actually individuals, I should say, in New York City and northern New Jersey. And then there was the Birthmark Doula Collective, which the grant to the Birthmark Doula Collective in New Orleans, which is a birth justice organization, and they were doing a lot of work to support women with COVID, or to basically ensure that women were being protected during the time, I would say broadly. So there was Birthmark Doula in New Orleans and Just Birth Space.
The borders in Texas in particular, sort of ways to try to protect pregnant women who are down in, I think, Texas in particular, because we did a project down there. So many sort of current events on top of just the broader issue that have been really challenging over the last year.
Gotcha. And so I guess overall, in thinking about your relative experiences, how has that particularly, your Williams education, been able to contribute to, I guess, like during that ramping up period?
During the ramping up for Every Mother Counts?
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's taught us to think really broadly and to be able to absorb information that is outside our domain, relatively, like how to absorb that information relatively quickly, because neither Liz or I have, nor I have a medical background, but we've been exposed to we've visited a lot of clinics together with EMC, a lot of health providers, and we've had to absorb that in a lot of medical information. I think there's just a broad range of issues faced from economic and financial information to how to, in terms of how to protect the organization and make sure it's healthy. How does it sustain itself? And so there's an internal aspect to being a board member there and really coming up to speed on how to help them. And that includes, how do you fund an organization? How do you keep it sustained and funded, for years in a way that is predictable? And then on the external side, how do you think through the choice of partners? What is the right way to think about, a respectful way to think about partners that you're going to fund? How would you analyze organizations for as recipients of the funding? And so it's just it's a broad range of issues. And I actually think one of the biggest things is to think about how do you focus meetings and conversations on the right questions? And that comes back to the sort of liberal arts education of just trying to figure out what the right questions are to ask, and what are the most salient points to focus the conversation on, particularly when everybody has very limited time as a board member. How do you surface those key points efficiently and focus the conversation, and also do it in a respectful manner, because you're dealing with, sometimes very large groups of people in conversations. So I think it's a lot. I think fundamentally it comes down to probably just being able to ask questions and have dialogue. That's probably the most important thing. I don't know, Liz, what you would.
No, I would have said the same thing, that there's this set of core skills that you take away from a Williams or a liberal arts education around just those things, analyzing, asking good questions, critical judgment, balancing risk and reward, communications, all of those things really have underpinned, I don't know, in my life, pretty much everything I've done, no matter what specific set of questions or issues or domain that you're applying them to. And I think also the sort of love of lifelong learning that comes out of a good liberal arts education, this idea that it's always great to go pick up and learn about something totally new, like maternal health, which is something I've always had a passion for as a mother, but I didn't really know anything about. So bringing that skill of walking in and just being curious and wanting to learn, I think is really important. And listening, right? Because there are a lot of things that I didn't know or understand. And so we're learning a lot about, again, I guess about trust-based philanthropy is sort of a new thing we've been talking about, and how do you get involved in communities. But then the other thing I would mention is I think it's a really diverse group of people at Every Mother Counts. And when we have people around the table from the team, but also from the board, who bring really different experiences and perspectives. Mariam's perspective as a founder and a CEO and a fundraiser, and a manager of a very disparate population of employees and outsource, crowdsource, whatever you do, Mariam. So all of us sort of bring different skills to the table. And so being able to listen and learn and have everybody create an atmosphere where everybody feels very comfortable bringing their points of view and their interests to the table for the service of the same good, to kind of, it's not about you and your ego, it's about what's best for the organization. That all, again, feels like stuff that started, at least in my journey, in my time at Williams. So.
And so how is the Williams community still a part of you today? And how, particularly between the two of you, how is that relationship how is that today?
I mean, I don't know about you, Mariam. I feel like I'm just, you're married to one. I feel like I'm steeped in stuff all the time. So I spent Saturday night doing the bicentennial trivia contest, which I sucked at, by the way, even though
Nice.
But so many of my friends are from Williams. Like, my wardrobe is mostly purple stuff at this point. Nice. I guess this is my third Williams call of the day already. So it feels like it's just such a pervasive part of my life, and threads throughout so many things that I do. And it's just great. And I stop strangers on the street if I see somebody wearing a Williams t-shirt, which is totally.
Totally.
My children hate it. But it's just such a big part of my life for something that was really 4 years for 4 years on campus, it's just underpinned so much of what I've done my whole life.
Yeah, and I feel like it's because I feel like I got there young, very young, and I feel like it's a little bit, what I would say is where I'm from. And so I feel like it's very much part of my growing up story, where I'm from story. And of course, the fact that my husband and I can look back on that time together at Williams and remember everything together is very special for us. So we, it's never far from our thoughts. We think about it and talk about it often. We still have so many friends from Williams that we talk to, that we see even in San Francisco. And then I feel like now I'm seeing, it's fascinating to see Williams and experience as a student, and then see it and experience it as a trustee. Because I don't think as a student, I thought at all, I'm not sure I even was aware that there was a board of trustees, and would probably not have understood what they what they do. And certainly never, I don't think I spent a lot of time thinking about how the college was run, what was going on, and what would the challenges be of being an administrator at the college? What would the difficulties be? I was just simply enjoying it all the time. I was enjoying it a lot. So I don't think I spent a lot of time thinking about how the sausage was made, if you will. So I find it fascinating to see, I think, the challenges of and the opportunities and the excitement of running, a institution like Williams. I still am I guess I'm very, very biased. I think whenever I run into a Williams person, and I recruit a lot, I'm constantly recruiting talent all the time. And I still really think that the Williams people I run into they're some of the absolute finest. I mean, really, the ability to think and communicate, it just outstrips the vast majority of people I meet. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of the people I meet from Williams. And these days they always feel like they're younger. Everyone is younger now. But I'm just so proud of the institution and what they've created. So I continue to run into mostly younger Williams alums, and mostly in the process of people trying to find jobs and really interview people. I just hired someone at Minted who is just spectacular, a guy who is a couple years out of Williams, maybe 4 years out of Williams. And he was at Walmart, and then he was at Williams. He's been at Williams at Minted after Walmart. And I was just thinking to myself the other day, now that, he just made a brilliant comment. Of course,
Of course. That's awesome.
The other way, so one of my calls this morning was a Travelers Board call. And I think the way I ended up on the Travelers Board was two people on the board are former trustees of Williams. So Clarence Otis and Lori Thompson. And I was on a call with both of them this morning talking about something totally unrelated to Williams. But it's, it is a network that stays with you for life.
Awesome.
And just, again, has so many great, impacts on how you go through your personal and your professional life over time. It's very cool.
Yeah, I feel like I've met, and spent time with the absolute highest echelons of American business. And I could just tell you, I really think the Williams people I know, are really the true intellectuals that I know are the Williams alums. They're the true intellectuals. So what we think of as routine is extremely special, is what I've discovered. What we would get used to at Williams, and what we got used to in terms of being with each other and talking to each other, and the kinds of conversations we would have, is extraordinarily unique and special. And it really distinguishes people, I think, as they move out into the world, because they're just such great thinkers. Anyway, that's my reflection on Williams all the time. It's just awe. And sitting on the board and hearing my fellow board members and how thoughtful they are and how eloquent they are, I'm always in awe at the trustee meetings.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We always ask this last question. It's, what is your bumper sticker? So it's essentially, if you were to make a bumper sticker, it's like one sentence you'd want to leave the community with. It can really be anything. Like, absolutely anything.
Okay, I'll go.
I'm good. I can't do bumper stickers, but go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. This is not my writing, but I heard this thing recently. You're remembered for the rules you break.
Hmm.
That would be a bumper sticker.
That's interesting. Can I just not do a bumper sticker and just tell you what I think instead? You guys can try to turn it into a, I guess I'm coming back to what I said earlier, which is what do you take from Williams? And I do think it's all those skills Mariam and I were talking about that you just see so deeply embedded in all Williams alumni, and this love of lifelong learning. And I think and I hope you also leave Williams with a true sense of yourself. You know, what motivates you, what drives you, what your passions are, what environment you thrive in. And I guess this isn't a bumper sticker, but what I really, people can go through life holding those things together, right? Like, because the world of opportunities is open to you as you leave Williams College. You can do anything, and so using those skills, remembering those skills, but also staying very true to that sense of self and doing things for you, not because you think other people are pointing you certain directions. And to me, that's the greatest gift is being able to hold those ambitions, those skills, and that sense of self all together at once. I think it's a really important thing on the on the precipice of leaving Williams anyway.
And the one thing I wanted to add on, since this started with friendship, is just to say that I'm amazed by how my Williams friendships have intersected with my profession, meaning that you keep hearing that this network of friends is important to you professionally, but it really is amazing. I was thinking about my banker at Allen and Company is was my husband's rowing friend, and we met when we were all teenagers. Can you believe that? We met when we were teenagers.
That's amazing.
And now he's my banker at Allen and Company. And
so funny.
It's funny to like then be plopped into this, sort of professional environment when we were all, going to parties together at Williams. Like it's funny. And so I feel like it's so nice. It's such a nice, long set of long-standing relationships, these friendships you form. And they're valuable in so many ways, emotionally and also, of course, professionally, as years go on.